listening to the WrestleHavoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky DeReyes right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, here to review Friday Night SmackDown from November 24th, 2023. Of course, it is the go-home SmackDown before this Saturday's Survivor Series War Games emanating from the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Illinois. Overall thoughts on this show. I thought it was a pretty decent show. Nothing really, I don't want to necessarily say important, but really nothing on this show was like really, they didn't really, to me, hype you up a lot for Survivor Series. Even though I'm very excited for Survivor Series, I kind of already have gotten, all the hype that I've needed based off all the shit on the internet. But nonetheless, overall thoughts on the show. Again, a pretty decent show. Nothing really special happened on the show. Of course, we had a great segment between, of course, Carlito and Santos Escobar. Right now, Santos Escobar is set to be one of the top heels in the company right now. Given the events of the past few weeks, of course, after leaving the Brass Knucks at Crown Jewel to then turning on Rey Mysterio and the LWO, Santos Escobar is now on his own, and he's doing a lot of good work, and his promo last week on SmackDown was off the frickin' charts. So we're going to be talking about the segment that he had with Carlito. Of course, it was actually recently announced that it was going to be Santos Escobar versus Carlito at the War Games pay-per-view, or I should say Survivor Series, at the Survivor Series pay-per-view, but with the angle that they played on this show, Dragon Lee stepped up to the plate, and we're now going to be getting Santos Escobar versus Dragon Lee, which I'm very, very, very excited about. WWE has done a great job in showcasing Dragon Lee with all of his talents, all of his in-ring ability. Great stuff. We also had, of course, Becky Lynch. Of course, Becky Lynch last week on SmackDown was revealed to be the newest member of the babyface team for the Women's War Games match against Damage Control. And the story that they were telling was, of course, Becky Lynch and Charlotte have this big history. They had this really big history, and both, really had a rocky history, to say the least. And basically, it's a story of can they coexist, but not really in a telling way. They try to really kind of build it slow, but nonetheless, very interesting stuff. Of course, they were in the main event against Bayley and Asuka, and really the majority of this show, basically the main focus was the Women's War Games match. So we're going to be talking about that. Judgment Day. Of course, Judgment Day is going to be playing a huge role in the Men's War Games match. Of course, it's going to be Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, LA Knight, Seth Rollins, and a returning Randy Orton. Yes, Randy Orton will be making his return tomorrow night at Survivor Series. I don't want to say long overdue, but I'm very excited for Randy Orton to return, man. He's been out since, I believe, the summer of 2022, and it opens up a lot of storyline possibilities, not only with guys like Cody Rhodes, but also with guys like Jey Uso, because if you do not remember this past Monday on Raw, when Cody Rhodes announced that Randy Orton was going to be the new entrant, or not the new entrant, but the new partner for Cody Rhodes' team, the look on Jey Uso's face spells, a little bit scared, because if you think about it, Jey Uso played a huge role in attacking Randy Orton and leaving him on the shelf. Of course, I'm talking about it from a kayfabe perspective, but you guys get my drift. So it opens up a lot of storyline possibilities. We're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more. Of course, Survivor Series is tomorrow, and I'm also going to be giving you guys a preview of the Survivor Series card. So yeah, before I get on with all this craziness, of course, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the friggin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Of course, if you guys had missed it, my AEW Full Gear review is up on the channel. I talk about Jay White being the challenger, and MJF defending his AEW World Championship against Jay White. All of the shenanigans that was happening in the main event, of course, with the involvement of Adam Cole. We also talk about that amazing, and I mean amazing, Texas death match between Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland, as well as Will Ospreay being all elite. So I talk about all that and much more right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast with the full gear review. If you guys haven't checked out the full gear review, the link will be in the description of this video below. All right, moving on. Let's talk about SmackDown. The show kicks off with Team Becky Lynch, of course. Becky Lynch opens the show, and we get a bunch of Becky chants by the crowd. She talks about how it's been a while, and she's so happy to stand in this ring and proud to say that the man has arrived on Friday Night SmackDown. People are wondering why she teamed with, of course, who she teamed with, and of course, Charlotte is a part of that team, and Becky Lynch and Charlotte have a long history together. A lot of that has to be bad. But, of course, she talks about how when the offer came up, she wanted to slap the heads out of Damage Control, and the answer will always be yes. What better place to do that than in Chicago and inside War Games? Bianca then gets the mic and says they have 4 members, and they have a solid team. War Games is perfect for them, and Damage Control have been running roughshod all over the women's division. And we've been getting a bunch of crowd boos, and she talks about how at War Games it's going to be 2 rings, 1 cage, no DQ, and there's going to be weapons, and, when they will go lower, and they will go to war. Shotzi gets the microphone as well, and she talks about how she just can't wait for everything going on. She acts all weird and stuff, and it's very cringeworthy, so I'm not even going to repeat the lines that she stated. Charlotte then does her woo, and then she talks about how War Games is a new beginning for them. But tomorrow night, War Games is going to be the end of Damage Control. And then what happens is Bayley comes out. She talks about how she never thought she would see the day that Charlotte and Becky stood next to each other because everybody knows that Bayley knows both of them for over 10 years. Every time they had a car ride, Charlotte always said something about Becky. Every personal conversation that she had with Becky, Becky would always talk about Charlotte. It is basically the gist of 2 egos clashing, says Bayley, but she understands it. She gets it. And, she basically goes to the fans and says, hey, you want to chant for Becky? Being a mom has made the man soft. War Games is one of the most brutal matches of all time, and you all need to be a cohesive unit. And the only team walking in War Games as a cohesive unit is Damage Control. And then Charlotte asks the question to Bayley, where is Damage Control? Where are all your members? Where is Asuka? Or I should say, with Asuka, since Asuka basically joined Damage Control a couple of weeks ago. And we all know the history with now Kairi Sane being involved with the group. Bayley's a little bit worried, to say the least. Becky says that she didn't come to Chicago to talk. She came in for a fight. So how about any 2 members on your team will take on, of course, Charlotte and Becky in the main event? And then Bayley says that is exactly what she had wanted, and she accepts the challenge. Overall thoughts on this segment? Again, a segment to hype up the Women's War Games match for Survivor Series. Nothing really special here. Of course, it also set up a tag team match, which will be in the main event with Becky Lynch and Charlotte taking on Bayley and, of course, Asuka, which is a very interesting pairing, and I'll talk about that right now. So Bayley is backstage with Damage Control. Bayley, of course, wants to find a partner, or 2 members of the Damage Control team teams up tonight against both Becky Lynch and Charlotte. But Dakota Kai has been recently giving a shit ton of suggestions recently and making a lot of decisions for the group, per se. Dakota says, hey, Bayley, you should team up with Asuka. And, of course, Bayley's like, okay. Even though she knows the history that she has with Asuka and also the history that she has with Kairi Sane. Interesting stuff. A lot of storytelling right here on these particular segments. And of course, when it comes to WWE, they have a shit ton of factions, and with all of those factions, they love crumbling those factions apart. And it turns out we're seeing a lot of that now. We saw that with the Bloodline. We're seeing technically that with, of course, Damage Control. We're seeing that with Becky and Charlotte, even though they're part of the same team. They're not a faction, but again, you get my drift. We're seeing that with the Brawling Brutes, for God's sakes. The Brawling Brutes are starting to have their problems with Rich Holland walking away. Santos Escobar turning on the LWO. Bro, factions are breaking up left and right in the WWE at this point. Moving on. We got Damian Priest and Finn Balor defending their undisputed tag team championships against the newly improved Street Profits. It was a pretty good match, to say the least. Relatively short. You knew going in that Damian Priest and Finn Balor were going to be retaining the undisputed tag team championships. Judgment Day is in control. Ford regains control. The Profits drop Balor face down, face first. We get a cover end to near fall. Meanwhile, Bobby Lashley is watching the match backstage, and B-Fab once again enters the fray. Throughout the past couple of weeks, of course, B-Fab has been wanting the services of Bobby Lashley, and could she be the newest addition to Bobby Lashley's new group? We're going to have to wait and see, but clearly from the direction that they are going, it makes total sense, and it gives something for B-Fab to do. Ford goes for repeated kicks and an enziguri on Priest. Priest gets taken to the outside, and then we get a chop by Ford on Balor, and then a high crossbody on Balor over the top rope on the outside. But then Priest runs through Ford, basically hitting him with a pounce, period, sending him over the announce table. Once we're back in commercial break, the Judgment Day is in control. Ford tags in Dawkins. Dawkins fights off Balor, but then we get a spinning back elbow by Dawkins. After that, we get a splash in the corner. Then he drops down Priest with a double underhook neckbreaker. After that, he has Balor up on his shoulders, but then Ford tags in. He's on the top. He ends up hitting the blockbuster, and we get a cover by Montez Ford and a near fall. After that, Ford goes to the top. He gets caught in a sling blade later on by Finn Balor. Balor then ends up hitting the backbreaker, and then Priest goes for a running drop kick. We get a cover by Priest and a kick out, but then Balor gets sent to the outside. Priest then grabs Ford. He misses the choke slam, but then Dawkins and Ford tried to go for the Revelation, but the Revelation kind of landed a little bit rough, to say the least. We get a cover into near fall. Ford then goes for repeated super kicks, and then Ford goes to the top, but then Rhea Ripley gets the referee distracted with Balor basically interfering in the match. Priest then picks up Ford, but then Balor makes the tag. Priest then ends up going for a modified tombstone with Balor hitting the coup de grace. So nice combination, nice tag team combination by both Priest and Finn Balor. And then we get a cover, and Balor and Priest retain the Undisputed Tag Team Championships. Pretty good match. Again, obvious that the Judgment Day were going to be retaining those tag team titles, and from what it looks like, the Judgment Day aren't losing those titles anytime soon, to say the least. Meanwhile, Bobby Lashley is pissed off backstage because once again, I should say, the Street Profits suffered another loss. Or loss, I should say. I said lost. Loss. Team Becky backstage. Basically, Becky and Charlotte argue, blah, blah, blah. After that, we get a very well-produced video package of Dragon Lee. And then we get the Grayson Waller effect with Kevin Owens. Very interesting stuff, because we all know Kevin Owens is in kayfabe, of course, suspended. Of course, Grayson Waller welcomes us to the Grayson Waller effect, and he brings out Kevin Owens, but instead of it being Kevin Owens, it is Austin Theory. Austin Theory comes out dressed up like Kevin Owens, and then, Grayson asks him, "Hey, man, are you gassed? Because you look really gassed." And then, of course, Kevin Owens' real music plays, and the real Kevin Owens comes out. And he says, "What are you guys doing? What is this?" He announced him as his guest in the Grayson Waller effect, so I am here. And, of course, Grayson Waller says, "Oh, wait, weren't you suspended?" And then Kevin Owens was like, "Yeah, the suspension ended today." He figured out why he would announce him this week. They could talk their differences, but what the hell is this? Of course, that is Kevin Owens pointing out, what the fuck is Austin Theory wearing? And Grayson says that they were supposed to make fun of him, talks about how he looked better, and Kevin Owens ends up accusing Austin Theory of going through his bag and stealing his shorts, and Kevin Owens is like, "I haven't seen those shorts in months. You stole from my shorts, you creep." After that, he threatens to punch them both in the face, but he says, you know what happens when you keep saying someone's name? Asks Kevin Owens. Then, of course, LA Knight comes out. Let me talk to you. Boy, oh boy, did you guys step in tonight. Yeah. KO tried to warn them, but you could not help yourself. They thought that they could talk trash or he would be here. Well, yeah, got caught. He figured and I could let him punch both of them, but then they start talking about him and didn't stop. He figured that if you talk about him or, if you keep talking about him, you got caught again. And then you talk about every excuse why you couldn't beat him, and it doesn't make any difference. Every single minute of every single hour of every day you're losing to me is just a fact of life. Yeah. And then after that, Greyson says that he could beat him, and then Greyson, in theory, want to punch them both in the face, but instead Kevin Owens and LA Knight gain the advantage and take out both heels, which then leads us to a tag team match between Kevin Owens and LA Knight taking on Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. Out of both Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, I feel like Grayson Waller has more of the potential. Look, with all due respect to Austin Theory screams a generic WWE wrestler. Like he is the type of guy that WWE would really want, but at the same time, to me, Austin Theory is kind of bland and he's kind of generic. Moving on, though, let's go through the match. We get repeated chops by KO, and then we get a right hand by Kevin Owens. LA Knight tags in, he fights off Grayson Waller, and then he ends up hitting a clothesline. LA Knight then goes for a suplex, and then we get a cover and a near fall. Knight is in control over Waller, but then Knight goes for a clothesline on Waller on the outside. LA Knight then bumps the heads of both Theory and Waller repeatedly on the announce table. And then Knight drives his elbow across the throat of Waller, but then Knight fights off Theory, but then Waller comes back to the outside and hits a clothesline. After that, once we're back from commercial break, the heels are in control. Kevin Owens tries to rile up the crowd in Chicago. And speaking of the crowd in Chicago, did you hear those CM Punk chants? Yeah, there were CM Punk chants in the crowd, and at the same time those fans were doing those CM Punk chants, the audience started booing, which is hilarious. But then after that, Kevin Owens again tries to fire up the crowd. LA Knight falls, tries to fight off the heels, but then he tags Kevin Owens. We get repeated stumps on Waller, and then Kevin Owens rolls to the outside. He clotheslines Waller, and then he clotheslines Theory. He ends up hitting a super kick, and then he sends Waller back into the ring. He super kicks Theory, but then Kevin Owens is on the apron. He hits a cannonball on the outside. Kevin Owens goes back to the top, and then he hits a swanton bomb. We get a cover and a near fall. Kevin Owens then misses a stunner, and then Theory goes for the tag, but then he hits a rolling shotgun dropkick. And then the heels gang up on Kevin Owens without the referee looking. Waller makes the tag. He goes to the top. Theory goes for the backbreaker. Meanwhile, Waller off the top hits an elbow drop. Later on, we get a cover and another near fall, but then Waller drives repeated elbows on Kevin Owens. We get a cover by Waller and a near fall, and then he ends up applying a side chin lock. Later on in the match, we get a DDT by Waller. He drops down Theory on the inverted power slam. He stomps it in the corner on Theory, but then he ends up face planting Grayson Waller. He stomps at both men into the corner, but then we get a running knee. After that, Knight slams down Theory. He hits an elbow drop. Kevin Owens later on comes in. He stuns Grayson Waller, and then LA Knight at the same time hits the BFT on Austin Theory. And we get a cover, and Kevin Owens and LA Knight get the win. Overall, pretty fun match, to say the least. Nothing really special. I mean, I feel like at this point, Grayson Waller and Austin Theory are just comedy acts. Look, they're going to be something one day, but again, they're just comedy acts in my opinion. Nothing really special. But nonetheless, Kevin Owens and LA Knight get the win. Meanwhile, Becky's backstage with Bianca. Bianca says Charlotte was right. She wasn't around when Charlotte and Becky had their falling out, but Bianca wants her to put all of that hate aside. And at War Games, if they want to walk out in one piece, they need to be on the same page. Becky says that, of course, she is a fighter, but she is cool and she will relax. After that, we got the Carlito segment. Yes, Carlito. Carlito Cool is not wearing any LWO gear. Of course, he was set to have a match against Santos Escobar at Survivor Series, but now that match is not happening, and I will explain to you why in this segment. Talks about how it's been a long time, and tomorrow night at War Games, it will be Carlito's first match at a WWE PLE in almost 13 years. And that's cool. But honestly, all he could think about was his injured friend, Rey Mysterio. All he could think about was getting his hands on the person responsible for injuring him, Santos Escobar. Talks about how he said horrible things about Rey, and he has a message for Escobar, and then he proceeds to speak in Spanish. He talks about how he made a very big mistake, and then Santos comes out. He talks about how he heard everything clearly, and he isn't LWO. You're saying all of you people, but of course, siempre llegas tarde. Where's your tattoo? Why aren't you representing the LWO colors? And you're saying Rey is your family. Santos says, no. Rey was always my family. LWO was my family, and it was not for you. And of course, he calls him an outsider. Talks about how his family would have still been together if it wasn't for Rey. If it wasn't for Rey, now he will never come back, and that is all because of you, Carlito. After that, both men brawl. The referees come in, they get separated. But then from behind, Santos off the barricade from the crowd hits a knee on the arm of Carlito. Once we come back from commercial break, Carlito is just being walked backstage, and all of a sudden, Santos once again attacks him. But then, coming to the rescue, Dragon Lee comes in for the save. This segment was great, man. I loved this Carlito and Santos Escobar feud. There's the bigger picture of that future one-on-one match between Santos Escobar and Rey Mysterio. Again, this LWO stuff, even though it's probably selling a lot of merchandise, at some point you kind of knew that they were going to, I don't want to say break up the group, but you kind of knew Escobar was definitely going to be his way out of the group, and he was going to really venture out on his own. And honestly, Santos is doing very well for himself. I mean, the promo that he cut, and we all know he's a good promo, but the promo that he cut last week was just off the frickin' chain. Just absolutely in-frickin' Some of the stuff that Santos Escobar even stated. Like, bro, this guy says, man, I want your leg chopped off. Shit like that, man. Santos is such a good heel. He knows how to make the people hate him, and that is the beauty of Santos Escobar. Santos Escobar is definitely, after splitting from the LWO, he's going to get elevated on another level. So that's great to see. But, of course, what happens is Dragon Lee comes in for the save later on in the show. He went to Nick Aldis, and it's now going to be Dragon Lee versus Santos Escobar. We have the Pretty Deadly taking on the Brawling Brutes. Holland suplexes Wilson. Butch tags in. The Brutes get Pretty Deadly for the double 10 beats of the bow ring, but Pretty Deadly are in control. We get the enziguri by Butch, but then Rich Holland all of a sudden walks out. What is up with all this dissension with all these different factions in the WWE? Holy shit. First the Bloodline, then they've been teasing something with the Judgment Day, and they're still doing shit with the Judgment Day. Just a lot of stuff left and right. Now we got the Brawling Brutes set to break up. Interesting. We get an enziguri by Butch. Of course, Rich Holland then walks out. Butch then turns around, and he gets hit with the uppercut. And then Pretty Deadly drops down Butch, and then we get a cover and a kick out. After that, Elton Prince tags in. But then Butch fights back. He hits German suplex, or that being Kit Wilson. And then he hits another German on Prince. We get a pump kick by Butch, and then we get a cover into near fall. Butch then works on the fingers of Prince, but then Wilson ends up going for the blind tag. Then Butch goes for the bitter end, and then he doesn't realize that Prince isn't the legal man. Wilson comes in out of nowhere, and Pretty Deadly get the win, with Rich Holland leaving his opponent high and dry. Interesting developments. We do not know how long Sheamus is going to be out, but again, this was just a generic match. Really, the bigger story is what are they doing with Rich Holland? I think we should keep an eye on that. Very interesting stuff. And again, all of these factions are just breaking up left and right, man. There's always got to be some dissensions within groups, right? Man. Judgment Day is backstage. Rhea Ripley talks about how they're on SmackDown because they run all of WWE. They defended the tag team titles. Dominic says that the last member of their team is a guy that Jey Uso took out 2 years ago. And of course, the Judgment Day will make sure that Randy Orton will not have another comeback. My apologies. I am very tired right now. Moving on, we got our main event. We got Bayley and Asuka taking on Charlotte and Becky Lynch. Of course, the bigger story is, of course, Becky Lynch and Charlotte. Could they get along? Because from what it looked like when Becky Lynch first came out and revealed as the newest member of the team for War Games, it looked like they were kind of on the same page. But knowing their history, there is going to be some sort of tension. And we really saw that tension at the end of the show, and it really cost them the match. So we're going to talk about this real quick. Becky goes for an exploder on Bayley, but then we get a baseball slide. Charlotte then off the top rope hits a moonsault. Once you're back in commercial break, Asuka's in control. Becky then tries to fight back. We then get a spinning kick by Asuka, but then she follows up with the boot, that being Becky Lynch. Becky then tries to tag in Charlotte, but then Asuka pulls her back. After that, Becky tries to hit the enziguri, and she does. Charlotte tags in, she hits a crossbody, and then she tops Bayley and Asuka. Then Charlotte ends up hitting the fallaway slam. Charlotte gets up, she hits the cartwheel clothesline, and we get a near fall. We then get a boot by Charlotte, but then Charlotte gets taken to the apron. We then get a roll-up by Bayley, or I should say on Bayley, and we get a near fall. She boots Bayley, and then we get a cover into kick out. Asuka tags in. Then what happens is she ends up hitting a code breaker on Charlotte when she tried to apply the figure 4, which is pretty cool. After that, we get a cover into near fall. Bayley then goes for another elbow drop, and then we get a cover into near fall when Becky makes the save. Becky gets sent to the outside, but then we get a chop block by Bayley on Charlotte. Then she pulls Charlotte back, but then Becky tags in. She drop kicks Bayley, and then she kicks both heels. She takes both Bayley and Asuka and hits the double DDT. We get a cover into kick out, but then Becky goes to the top. She hits the missile drop kick. We get a cover into kick out, and then she applies the disarmer, but Asuka comes in with the kick. Asuka gets taken to the outside, but then Bayley tries to go for the Rhodes plant, but instead we get the belly-to-back suplex by Becky countering Bayley. After that, she hits the manhandle slam, and then Charlotte out of nowhere spears Asuka, which lands on Becky Lynch. Meanwhile, after that, Becky and Charlotte end up arguing. Then Bayley then takes out Becky, knocking Charlotte down, and we get a roll-up, and Bayley and Damage Control get the win to close out SmackDown. Overall thoughts on this, again, pretty self-explanatory. Of course, could Charlotte and Becky get along with all their history behind them? Clearly, we haven't. There's a lot of shit going on right now when it comes to Becky and Charlotte. When it comes from the kayfabe world, but again, still, it's very interesting. Am I excited for the Women's War Games match? No, I'm not really that excited, but I think it's going to be a great match nonetheless. WWE really knows how to book War Games matches, and honestly, there's a lot of possibilities that could happen, and we could be in for a special match, to say the least. But yeah, that was my SmackDown review from November 23rd, 2024. Let's do a quick card rundown of what we are going to be seeing at Survivor Series War Games. Of course, we got the Women's War Games match as Bianca Belair teams up with Charlotte, Shotzi, and Becky Lynch to take on Damage Control, consisting of Bayley, Io Sky, Kairi Sane, and Asuka. We also got Santos Escobar taking on Carlito, which is no longer going to be happening. In Carlito's replacement, we're going to be getting Dragon Lee, and we're going to be getting a Santos Escobar and Dragon Lee match. I'm excited for that. In my least favorite match that I'm excited about, the least match that I'm excited about, and you can't really blame me, is the Women's World Championship is going to be on the line as Rhea Ripley will defend her championship against Zoe Stark. Where's the competition for Rhea Ripley? Barely any competition whatsoever. We got the Intercontinental Championship as Gunther defended his IC title against The Miz. Now, on paper, this seems really dumb, but knowing the body of work that Gunther has been doing and that Miz has been doing when it comes to their promo skills, honestly, I think this match is going to be absolutely phenomenal. It's very weird seeing Miz as a babyface, but he can definitely pull it off. And, of course, in the main event, we got the men's War Games match as Cody Rhodes will step into War Games, the match that his own father created. He's going to step into the match beyond. Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, Jey Uso, Sami Zayn, and Randy Orton will team up in the men's War Games match to take on the Judgment Day, consisting of Damian Priest, Finn Balor, Dominic Mysterio, JD McDonough, and Drew McIntyre. So that is your card rundown for Survivor Series War Games. Honestly, I'm excited about the show. I think the show is going to be great. The atmosphere in Chicago is going to be unlike anything we have ever seen. I mean, how many times have we gone to a Chicago show and, they've just been hijacking the whole show with a shit ton of chants that for a fact that WWE does not want to hear. And there's a lot of speculation on CM Punk, but let's be brutally honest, I don't think CM Punk will be showing up on that show, even though on many of his Instagram stories that he could possibly give you teasers. But again, I don't think he will show up at Survivor Series. My best bet is that he could possibly make his return at the Royal Rumble. Who knows, but we're going to have to wait and see at the end of the day. So yeah, that was my WWE SmackDown review from November 24th, 2023. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. Look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is Flamin' Ricky DeRays signing out. I'll see you guys later. Peace.